Hi, Grant here with Serenity Financial Coaching. I was here working at my desk as I normally do, even before Corona, and I glanced over at my globe and I don't know why, I just had a thought that, gee, I hope my kids never use that globe for a project in school. If they, like in geography, I don't know if they still teach geography. Maybe that's like a thing that's from the past, but that globe is from the 1960s. There's countries that are here in present day that aren't on that globe, and there are countries on that globe that no longer exist. One of the things I like about the globe that I keep is that it still says like USSR on it. It's interesting to look at, and I started thinking, why do some people last and some people don't? I mean, no civilization has lasted forever. Look at the Roman Empire. One of the reasons they finally broke apart was there was a huge division between the East and West among about a dozen other causes, and it just made me think of this weird time and how important solidarity is as a people. Before this happened, and still, you hear all the time in the news about just all the divisions that we have, and it seems like every day they come up with some new type of divisions. I mean, and, some divisions are stem from legitimate reasons, but we're divided on race, we're divided on gender, we're divided on socioeconomic status, we're divided on status and power and what type of job you do, what kind of car you drive, and what kind of house you live in, and what kind of church you go to. Do you go to a church, or do you go to a synagogue? Do you go to a synagogue, or do you go to a mosque, or do you go to no church at all? Humans can find an infinite amount of ways to divide themselves. We hear in the news a lot that this is our Pearl Harbor moment, and comparing nurses to soldiers on the beaches of Normandy. Politicians say this is our war. Our president said he feels like a wartime president right now, and I don't know if all the war talk is beneficial or not, but people seem to be eating it up. So I have an example of war for you today that actually can be quite helpful, but more uplifting than comparing casualties. And so the year is 2005 and 2006. The place is Ramadi, Iraq. The WHO is Al-Qaeda, and the Mujahideen, the insurgent fighters. And then on the other side, you have United States Marines and soldiers. And Ramadi is a dangerous place for everyone there. It's dangerous for the soldiers and Marines, and it's dangerous for just the innocent people there that want to live their life. The streets are littered with huge roadside bombs. There's an insurgent on every corner. It was an extremely dangerous place for the Marines and soldiers, and they took a lot of casualties, a lot of injuries, and they sacrificed a lot. It was just a bad place. And it really was the epicenter of violence in Iraq, not just for Ramadi, but stemming out. That's where a lot of the Al-Qaeda leadership was. And the military commanders already knew at this time that there's no winning this war like in World War II, where you have a parade. It's winning is being able to hand over the country back to the Iraqis, and the military leaving or being there in some small advisor role. And they knew they would never be able to hand over the country with places like Ramadi how they were. They needed to extremely weaken the insurgency in Ramadi in order to hand it over to the Iraqi military. So the military commanders went to the Navy SEAL leadership and said, you guys are going to Ramadi. And you're going to fight alongside the Marines, you're going to fight alongside the soldiers on joint operations, and you're going to do it with the Iraqis. You're taking the Iraqis with you. It's the only way they'll feel empowered to take back over their country is if you include them. And the Navy SEAL leaders knew their people were not going to like this. SEALs like to operate with SEALs. They like to go it alone, cut the leash, let us loose, we'll take care of it. And they always have a conventional like QRF, quick reaction force, to back them up if things go sideways. So they knew they weren't going to like it, telling them that you're going to have to fight alongside Iraqis. They didn't trust the Iraqis because there were a lot of there were terrorists that infiltrated that organization, and they just didn't have the training that U.S. soldiers had. And so they knew they weren't going to like that. And the other thing was SEALs often had longer hair than the rest of the military, and they grew beards. They wore their uniforms are a mess. SEALs and really all special forces people, there's this division between them and the rest of the people, and everyone thinks that they think they're better than everyone else. And the SEAL commanders knew if they were going to be fighting alongside jointly U.S. troops, they were going to have to close that division. So they also told them, hey, you're going to cut your hair, you're going to go shave and get your uniform in order, because the rest of the military prides themselves on their appearance and strict adherence to the standards. And so when someone's divided, someone has to be the first to cross the divide. And the SEALs decided that we're going to have to be the first to cross the divide, that we're no different than anyone else, that this is a mutual relationship. The SEALs knew that the ground forces needed them, but they also knew that they were going to be reliant on them. It was a mutual relationship. They were going to succeed or fail together. And that's where we're at right now. We have 30 million people out of work. It's not, oh, sucks to be you. We're all in this together, and we all have a mutual fate in this. Imagine a world where 30 million people get behind on their mortgage, where 30 million people are getting evicted from their apartment. You think that's going to affect just them? That would be a domino effect that we have never seen. And no one's going to escape unhurt. And if we as a country, we don't help each other, it's going to make it way worse than everyone else. We can't be divided in this. And here's why the SEALs and the ground forces and the Iraqis couldn't be divided in Ramadi. So outside of Ramadi it's called a forward outlooking base. That's where they sleep at night, right? And you can't hide that from the insurgency. They know where it's at, and they know where to go attack the American forces. And so each side and each corner of this base, you have what's called sentinels, Army and Marine guards that are at a post, and they're up on a watchtower with a machine gun looking for insurgents that are mounting an attack. And it happened all the time. Massive machine gun attacks, RPG attacks. And these sentinels were extremely brave. They were standing behind sandbags, but they were exposed, and they never flinched. They never ducked. And when these attacks came, they let loose on that machine gun, and they never let up, because the entire base was dependent on them. They had one sentinel. It was his first post. It was his second tour to Iraq. And he said in his first 20 minutes at his post, he fired more ammunition than his entire first tour of duty. He said he never saw anything like it, because the reason they attacked so hard was to try to take the sentinel out. Try to take that guard out who was protecting particularly the front gate, because they had a massive truck waiting, not like a little pickup truck, like a huge flatbed truck full of explosives. And the goal was to take out the sentinel and then ram the concrete barriers, run the front gate to the center of the base, explode, and take everybody out. So almost daily, when the machine gun fire would rupture, didn't matter who you were. If you were a Navy SEAL, a cook, a Marine, a soldier, didn't matter if you were sleeping, you didn't even have time to put your pants on. There were photos and videos of people running through the base in boxer shorts and flip-flops, body armor, and their rifle, manning their post. You had Navy SEALs, some of the most elite warriors on the face of the earth, shoulder to shoulder on a firing line with a cook. Everyone was in it because they knew the truck was coming. They knew the truck was coming, and they knew they had to repel the attack. It didn't matter who you were. You fought side by side, because you all were either going to succeed or you were all going to get blown to pieces. That's just the reality of a real war, and that's the reality of this weird virus. And it never happened. They never ran the gate, and nobody's surprised by that, because American soldiers, Marines, SEALs, they're tenacious. They don't like to fail. They just don't. But it's not just soldiers, it's people, right? So every Navy SEAL has a mom. Someone raised them to be a Navy SEAL. Every Marine has a brother or sister that didn't become a Marine, but you know what? They share a lot of the same traits because they grew up in the same place, the same environment. And we see it playing out now daily, right? Our people storming the beaches aren't soldiers, they're nurses and doctors. I'm not surprised by that at all. The backbone of the country right now is grocery store workers. I have 2 clients that work in grocery stores, like in that industry, and they're working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you hear about like strikes and talk of walking out, and I don't think that's the norm. These people haven't complained one bit, and they are tired. They haven't complained that they've been more exposed to the virus than anyone else, and they're not going to stop until this is over. Nurses, doctors, grocery store drivers, truck drivers, delivery drivers, they've all walked up to the firing line. And it's time everyone walks up with them, shoulder to shoulder, no matter who you are, and hold each other up. Because if we stay divided during this time, well, then we all share the same fate. And if we let people fall, it'll be like a massive truck bomb going off. They said during that in Ramadi that if a truck bomb would have made it past the wire and detonated in the center, it would have been the equivalent of a U.S. airstrike on the base. Failure was not an option. And for us in this time, being divided and failure is not an option. This is why we have families. Families support families. Friends, real friends, support friends. Churches support people. Communities support communities, and strangers help strangers. That's how it works. The government can't take care of everybody. No matter how controversial you may think that sounds, that's just that's just a fact. That's not a political statement. There are 30 million people without a job right now. There are 320 million people in this country. Those 320 million people have way more resources collectively than the U.S. government. We have more than enough money, more than enough resources right now to help those 30 million people. And if we don't, it'll become worse for everyone. So I want you to think, if you're doing well and those stimulus checks come, help someone that's not doing well. If you're a churchgoer, live up to your mandate. If you're a nonprofit, now's the time to earn your tax-exempt status, because that's why you have it, is because you provide a service that the government would have if you didn't exist. But it's all going to be predicated on individuals doing their part. And so today I just want to challenge you to do your part wherever you see it. Be neighborly. Reach out. Hey, do you need anything? Is there anything I can help you with? Do your social distancing, and we'll get through this together. And until next time, remember to imagine, believe, succeed. We'll get through this, and it will be just as good as always. Take care.